There are only two things of importance in this world: wealth and power, nothing else. Wealth is measured by the resources you possess. Power is determined by how you use those resources and how well you secure more. The relationship between these two forces defines everything about a person, whether king, admiral, or a common thief. Prince Xizor of House Xizor understood this truth better than most. As a member of a Black Sun syndicate and head of an immensely wealthy shipping conglomerate, he was a magnate of extraordinary power and influence. And he made sure everyone knew it. His palace stood in the heart of a Republic city. From the balcony of his bedchamber, the Senate and Jedi Temple were visible. The historic Farfella skyscraper, named for the hero of Rusan, was leveled so that his palace could rise in its place. A statement of wealth and power in equal measure. While lesser criminals, like that pathetic slug, Zero, hid in the underbelly of a planet-wide city, Xizor basked in the sunlight where he belonged. It was a foolish misconception that shadowy deals were made only in dark, hidden places, far from public eyes. No, the greatest acts of corruption were discussed in the Senate chamber. During lavish parties and grand performances in the Grand Theatre. The most dangerous deals were made here, on the surface, among the wealthy and powerful, beneath the light of the sun. The Black Sun. He wouldn't hide. He was no short-sighted fool or a trembling coward. He was a man of wealth, power and influence. But more than that, he was a man who knew when to wait and when to strike. A small smile tugged at his lips as he watched the shuttle of the Tau make its final approach toward the hangar of his palace. The Tau, new players on the galactic board, powerful, ambitious, and brimming with potential. Many saw them as rivals, or dismissed their strength entirely, unable or unwilling to see the obvious. But he would not squander this chance. For all his patience, he would be a fool not to reach out when such a grand opportunity presented itself. A small chuckle escaped his lips as he turned on his heel and moved at a measured pace toward the ballroom chamber, where he would welcome his guests. "Prepare refreshments and snacks for our visitors." He called to no one in particular, yet certain both servants and droids heard him. "Ensure a wide selection is ready for their enjoyment. All who are invited to my palace shall know my hospitality." Lina Voss stood open-mouthed as she looked around. "Wow, that's so pretty," she whispered, her eyes darting everywhere. The palace of this crime lord was far greater than she had expected. It rivaled even the Nightbloom Palace of the Blackthorn dynasty on Amagra Prime. She had the honor of visiting that palace a few times when she was younger. Not all the memories were clear, but she felt it in her bones. this one could match it. The prince has a sense of style, Dane admitted, though he clearly disliked saying it. A grand display of wealth without drawing everything in rare metals. I always hated that about imperial nobility. Bloody gold everywhere. He muttered. Gold is the color of the Imperium and the Emperor. Silent Tide noted. It is not strange that imperial nobility use it so extensively. I am well aware. Dane sniffed, memories clearly stirring. Doesn't change the fact they overuse it. He glanced around. That's why I like the Lady Captain's style. She can show her wealth without gold-plating everything. If this palace is anything to go by, she and the prince will get along. That remains to be seen, Lifesight said quietly as they approached the ballroom doors. The pair of guards escorting them stepped forward, while the droid that had led them moved aside. Prince Xizor awaits you inside, the machine said in a measured tone. Please enjoy the hospitality of my master. A second later, the massive doors slid open automatically, revealing the grand ballroom. It was a masterpiece of tasteful architecture, with frescoes and mosaics adoring the ceiling, depicting dozens of myths from many cultures, masterfully fused into a single narrative of power and cleverness. Massive windows flooded the chamber with natural light, while artificial illumination perfectly mirrored the sun. Tables laden with drinks and delicacies lined the walls, a promise of luxury in every dish. And there, at the center of the chamber, stood Prince Xizor of the Black Sun, a Twi'lek at his side, a king in the heart of his kingdom. He murmured something into her ear. She giggled, kissed his cheek, and drifted towards one of the exits, offering the newcomers only a slight incline of her head. Welcome to my palace, Prince Xizor said warmly. My apologies for the state of the chamber. He gestured around. I am organizing a charity ball for later this evening, and preparations are well underway. He stepped toward them. But given the urgency of the current situation, I believed it prudent we meet as soon as possible. Silent Tide's smile widened as she approached the crime lord. Everything was prepared so beautifully, the perfect stage for their little game. After dealing with senators, only a handful of whom had shown even a shadow of true intelligence, this was a worthy challenge. Indeed, Prince Xizor, time is of the essence. So many things are in motion, so many opportunities opening before us. She took a glass of wine from a passing droid as she stepped before the Faline prince. It is a pleasure to finally meet you in person. Likewise. Xizor smiled. Recognizing a fellow player of political games, he took her hand and brushed a light kiss against it. A true honor to meet the famous Silent Tide. You are even more beautiful in person. Charmer. Silent Tide giggled, playing along. Allow me to introduce Seeker Lifesight, the Ethereal, and Dane Marek and Lina Voss, representatives of a Blackthorn dynasty. Xizor turned to the others. Ah yes, a true pleasure to meet one of the wise ethereals. Your presence humbles me. I'm sure it does. The seeker replied kindly, though it was clear he did not believe him. Your lady caused quite the stir across the galaxy with the reveal of the Herald of Prophet, Xizor said, turning to Dane and Lina. I hear Kuat of Kuat threw a temper tantrum when he saw the footage of her flagship, which amused me greatly. We are glad the Lady Captain's flagship impressed you, Dane replied coldly, never taking his eyes off him. Though, I must say, you surprise me. Xizor raised an eyebrow. How so? Your pheromones. You didn't use them. The old warrior said flatly. A rare display of wisdom from a criminal. For the briefest instant, Xizor's eye twitched. It was clear Dane had no intention of playing the game he and Silent Tide enjoyed. A shame. He had hoped for something more refined. But the situation was immediate, and time could not be wasted. I expected you to come prepared, the Thaleen said with a small shrug. Besides, if even half the stories in the official records of your home galaxy are true, you would have detected my use of pheromones before this meeting was over. This would make me your rival, if not your enemy, which runs counter to my interests. That's good, Lina said through a mouthful of snacks. It would be a shame if we had to damage these pallets during our escape. The casualness of the remark made Xizor's blood run cold for a moment. He had guards, of course, Thaleen warriors, mercenaries and droids, but he also knew Lina was a Force user who had impressed the Jedi, and Dane Marek specialized in hunting Force sensitives in his former life. He doubted Silent Tide or Lifesight posed much of physical threat. But those two were dangerous. Would he survive an encounter? Most likely. He had more than enough elite assets on call. But the cost would be immense, not to mention the damage to his reputation and influence. He released a slow breath. There will be no need for that, I assure you, Xizor said, offering a reassuring smile. After all, you have grand plans for the Outer Rim and the Hutt cartels. There was no surprise in their eyes and no denial. His smile widened. The silence confirmed everything. Picking a fight with the Hutts. A bold move if there ever was one, he said evenly. There was no other choice, Lifesight said grimly. Of course there was. You could have submitted to the Hutts. That, after all, was the point of your meeting with Zero, Xizor said with a shrug. But you chose to stand your ground. Admirable, if dangerous. Well, the Hutts didn't wait long to play their hand, Dane said, crossing his arms. Clearly, they aren't interested in diplomacy. The Hutts ruled the Outer Rim long before the Republic existed, Xizor replied. They have every reason to believe themselves powerful enough to force you into submission. And they, without a doubt, have the resources and manpower to try. That is why you are seeking allies. Or why the Hutt's rivals are seeking an alliance with us. Silent Tide cut in. Xizor chuckled. In my world, every rival is a potential ally, and every ally is a potential rival. He took a glass of wine from a passing droid. In fact, I already have several profitable arrangements with the Hutts. We have cooperated for quite some time. We share interest in a number of sectors. He stepped aside and selected one of the suites. The eyes of his guests followed his movement. What changed? Niatel asked. Xizor chewed the sweet for a moment before answering. The syndicate is weak. Our old leadership is dead. The organization fractured. Rebuilding our ranks and hierarchy takes time. A great deal of time. The Hutts, meanwhile, are entrenching their position and moving into areas where Black Sun is weakest. He looked at them. Do not misunderstand my intent. I do not wish to see the Hutts destroyed. They are an important force in the galaxy. However, his eyes glinted. I want them weakened, more open to the deals I intend to offer them. He paused. That is why I spread the rumor that the Tau made a deal with Black Sun and ensured it reached 0. A faint twitch told him they understood what that meant. The reason Ravax attacked when he did, Dane said darkly. You forced them to rush. Indeed, Xizor replied with a devilish smile. I knew Ravax was capable and that he commanded a powerful army. But I also knew the information he received about Furious Net was, at best, pure speculation. The less time he was given, the less prepared he was, the greater the chance of his defeat. I had hoped not only that the Hutt plans would fail, but that Ravax himself would die. He grimaced. Only one of those came true. No matter, that can be corrected. Perhaps it can. The Seeker acknowledged with a nod, assuming the Commonwealth knows where to strike. Marvelous, Xizor said, gesturing toward a staircase leading to the upper floor. Please follow me. There is much to discuss. The future of the Outer Rim, perhaps even the entire galaxy. The galaxy? Lina sounded genuinely surprised. What do you mean by that? Xizor chuckled as he began to lead them. As newcomers, you may not have noticed, but tensions are rising between the core and the Outer Rim. There were tensions before, of course, but now it feels like a cascade, picking up speed. Are you referring to the Naboo crisis? Niatel asked with a tilt of her head. I thought that the Trade Federation got away with the whole invasion rather lightly. I would have expected far harsher punishment, especially since Chancellor Palpatine is from Naboo. Palpatine kept the peace, Xizor countered. As much as the Senate doesn't like to admit it, they need Trade Federation's resources and cargo carrying capacity for their economy. So rather than any real punishment, they only got a slap on the hand. Not that it made them any less resentful. Elaborate, Dane asked with a raised eyebrow. Xizor paused, considering whether to share his thoughts, then nodded. I don't know all the details, and much of it is speculation, but I've noticed a growing gulf forming between the Outer Rim and the core. The Trade Federation is forging alliances with other corporations in the region, increasingly antagonistic towards the Senate, he said, rubbing his chin. Silent Tide hummed as she walked beside him. What do you think they are planning? Probably some kind of trade war, an alliance with other corporations aiming to force the Senate into granting more concessions and freedom to operate in the Outer Rim. Xizor replied with a shrug. Despite their mutual dislike, the core needs the Outer Rim resources, and the Outer Rim relies on the core's wealth to grow. That's been the balance for millennia, though with you on the stage, things could change drastically. Silent Tide glanced at Lifeside, who let out a quiet breath. Unavoidable. We didn't choose to be displaced into your reality, Prince Xizor, but we must adapt, all the same. I approve your resolve, Seeker, Xizor said as they reached the top of the stairs. Now, let's talk business. The upper chamber was darker than the ballroom, but more spacious, decorated with unmistakably Faline motifs. Lina stood with her mouth agape, admiring the frescoes above her head, as Xizor led them toward a hollow projector at the room's center. While some followed the prince, others lingered, marveling at the artistry. Dane, however, kept his eyes on the distant shapes. Guards were present on the far end of the room, well over a dozen of them, silent, unmoving guardians of a meeting. They had full body armor and were well armed. Clearly, Xizor didn't go cheap on security. As they approached, the hollow projector flickered to life, revealing the map of a galaxy. As I said, tensions are rising across the galaxy. Xizor began, stopping near the projection. Recently, the Senate confirmed that the outbound flight most likely ended in tragedy after contact was lost, not long before the Great Displacement. He looked at his guests. Your arrival shifted some attention from that fiasco, but the fact remains, one of the Republic's most ambitious operations in decades failed. Hardly confidence-inspiring for the Senate. Ah, the outbound flight, the Seeker murmured, bowing his head in grief. A tragic loss. Do we know what happened to them? I wish I could tell you that my contacts have access to more than the official reports. Xizor grimaced. As far as we know, hyperdrive failure or some other accident claimed them, along with all the promises for expansion into the unknown regions. Dane chuckled and shook his head. So much for the Republic's ambitions. Indeed. Xizor nodded, gesturing as the map zoomed in on the region near the Commonwealth's borders. If that wasn't enough, news has recently come from Radnor. Apparently some kind of virus is ravaging part of the planet. My informants tell me the leadership fled, leaving everyone else behind. Niatel leaned closer, studying the map. And what does the Republic intend to do? I hear they will send the Jedi, as always, Xizor said, rolling his eyes. No idea who they will send exactly, or if they will succeed. Either way, when the crisis ends, Radnor will need rebuilding. The Republic won't lift a finger. It isn't important enough for them. He turned to Silent Tide. You can exploit that. Watercast tilted her head. intrigued. An interesting move, revealing such information so freely. Some might call it foolish. Hardly. Xizor straightened up. The fact is that you don't have the ships capable of reaching Radnor in a quick manner. Or if you have them, they are few in numbers and definitely better used elsewhere. I, on the other hand, am a head of a massive shipping conglomerate, capable of doing just that. My ships will support your relief efforts, and when you will spread your influence through the system, so will I. Dane whistled. Well, no one can accuse you of lacking ambition. Ambition is the death of those without means or vision. Xizor replied with a grin. I have both. He gestured, focusing the hologram on the region. Radnor has value the Republic doesn't appreciate. It sits near several worlds rich with resources, and, most crucially, it's on the opposite side of Tatooine. When you move against the Hutts, it will be prudent to have something at their back. Lifesight stepped closer, studying the map in silence. Xizor tried to read his expression, but there was nothing. The ethereal was carved out of stone, and Faline Prince couldn't find anything there to exploit. Quite the opposite. The longer he focused on the ethereal, the greater grew his impression of his wisdom and authority. He looked away, a twinkle of genuine unease creeping in. The Tau spoke of ethereals as if they were chosen by the stars to guide all people to enlightenment. Xizor had assumed it was a ruse, some form of manipulation, maybe even a pheromone effect similar to his own species. But no, not entirely. Somehow this seeker, a wandering monk, projected an aura of authority that even he, the under-prince of the Black Sun, could feel. He felt it, and feared it. For if this is what a seeker could project, what of their true rulers? I shall relay your proposition to the Ethereal Council, the seeker promised quietly, pulling Xizor from his thoughts. But now I believe we should speak of Ravax and Roon. Yes, of course. Xizor tapped the hollow table, shifting the projection to the Tau territories and the surrounding region. I assume you already know. Ravax retreated to Roon. He has close ties with the local governor, a tyrant really. Baisat Kong. Holograms of both men joined the map. Kong is a clever man. Officially he rules Roon. In truth, he acts as an arbitrator between the many organizations that maintain bases there. He gestured again, and the hologram shifted to Roon itself, a lush green world encircled by rings of asteroids. Black Sun, Hutts, Pikes, Trade Federation, Techno Union, take your pick. As one of the worlds of the Spice Triangle, dozens of organizations have interests there. Kong plays the role of a gracious host, securing funds and resources from every faction in exchange for ensuring that no major conflict interrupts business. Xizor glanced at Ravax's hologram. Ravax is his enforcer. They allied nearly a decade ago, when the Pikes tried to claim a larger share. Ravax and his reavers crushed them, slaughtering them to the last man, tortured their local leadership, and sent the recordings to the remaining pikes as a warning. I'm guessing it worked wonders, Dane said, narrowing his eyes. It did, Xizor nodded. The pikes were forced to pay Kong heavily to regain their former holdings. Since then, no one has dared to overstep. Treaties were signed. If anyone tries something similar, they will be eliminated by all sides of agreement, and their holdings shall be divided. He grimaced. After securing his position, Kong reached out to major corporations and the banking clan. He became even more powerful, all while maintaining an illusion of legitimacy before the Galactic Senate. Xizor shook his head. The truth is, many senators have investments on Roon, or in the businesses operating there. The spice must flow and all that. There must be valuable data in Kong's residence, Silent Tide said, eyes glinting. Enough dirt to end dozens of political careers, Xizor agreed. Moreover, Kong maintains a surprisingly competent intelligence network. I'm certain he has valuable information on every crime lord operating on and around Roon. He turned to the Tau. I want a copy of that data. A large demand, Niatel noted. What do you offer in return? Current data on his defenses, for one, and contact with the Kong's opposition. Xizor began. Kong runs a mockery of democracy, with his opponents suffering accidents and falling victim to crime. While few in number and driven into exile, there exists a Roon Liberation Front, a revolutionary movement led by Triumvirate. Xizor gestured, and a large image of a young, red-haired woman in rebel attire appeared. Kira Sol, the militant leader of the opposition. She leads the rebel movement on Roon itself. Talented, her operatives are skilled, but the simple fact is she lacks the manpower and equipment to be more than a nuisance to Kong's militia and Ravak's warhost. Another gesture brought up the image of an older gentleman with a long white beard, Colleen Pax, formerly of the New Path Party, a moderate and diplomatic voice of the movement. Forced into exile, he drifted through the stars, seeking allies. 2 years ago, he joined the Liberation Front. He tried to convince the Senate to act against Kong's abuses of power. But, as I said, many senators have interests on Roon and will not lift a finger, especially for a non-member world. Xizor crossed his arms. He is still on Coruscant, pleading his case to anyone who will listen. I believe you could be a welcome surprise for him after years of failure. Without a doubt, Silent Tide said, smiling. This will certainly ease our future plans. And the last member of a triumvirate? An image of a green-skinned Twi'lek appeared, dressed like a scoundrel of a top class. A Cobite, trader and smuggler. He is the main reason Kira can resist Kong's forces at all. And he is my agent. Xizor said proudly. I knew it was a long shot, but keeping them operational ensured I would have a backdoor into Roon, and a way to eliminate Kong, if necessary. Dane furrowed his brow. You don't seem to like Kong much. Why haven't you dealt with him already? Xizor grimaced. Black Sun has interest on Roon, and the local prince, Xylox, my rival, not only has a base there, but also close ties with Kong. He gave Dane a sharp look. Assassinating Kong is too risky. Too great a chance someone from my faction would find out. Too great a risk of internal conflict, maybe even civil war. He shook his head. No, as much as I hate Xylox, Kong and Ravax, killing them isn't worth the cost to the Syndicate. His frown melted into a smile as he looked at the Tau. But now, I have a chance to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. Lifesight, the wise ethereal, chuckled. Are we reduced to a stone now? He asked, clearly amused. A big blue boulder would be more accurate, but yes. Xizor replied with a playful grin. So you are offering us information on Roon and contact with the opposition to justify our future operation. Silent Tide mused. What can you tell us about Scarif? Xizor tensed for only a fraction for a second before letting out an amused hoof. Ugh, I should have expected you knew of Ravak's secondary base already. He waved his hand, and the hologram shifted back to the map, focusing on the small star system. I have very few operatives there. Ravax made Roon his main base. Scarif is mostly storage, a hidden depot of resources he can mobilize in emergencies or for future expansion. Another gesture revealed the beautiful tropical planet in all its glory. Scarif is remote, and very few know the routes to it. Ravax ensures only a carefully chosen section of his warhost knows of its existence. Sure, rumors exist, but knowing the system's name is not enough. You must have coordinates to actually reach it. So, does this mean Scarif is undefended? Dane asked. Hardly. Ravax has stationed a large portion of his personal droid army there, and he ensured the location is well secured. Several ships remain in silent orbit, running cold, crewed only by droids, difficult to detect on approach. More concerning is the significant complement of droid starfighters on the surface. My operative speaks of dozens, perhaps hundreds, ready to launch in its defense. The Faline Prince shook his head. Add to that shields over the main base, several turbolaser turrets, and ion cannons, and Scarif becomes a fortress that few would dare to assault, and fewer still would survive. Not that it will be much of a challenge for you. Not us, Lifesight said softly, shaking his head. Them. He glanced at Lina and Dane. That was enough to make the young psyker to stop staring at the frescoes and focus fully on the conversation. Us? She asked, clearly surprised. The Blackthorn dynasty, to be precise. Silent Tide explained. Lady Blackthorn wishes to expand her domain and extend her influence. Talks are still ongoing, but the current plan is this. While the Tau focus on Roon, the Blackthorns will take Scarif for themselves. It shouldn't be a challenge for us, Dane said confidently. The dynastic army is a potent force. I believe you, Xizor said with a nod. But do not underestimate Ravak's focus on that world. As I said, much of his personal droid army is stationed there. He turned back to the hologram and highlighted several trade lanes. Officially, Ravak stole these units from various corporations, mostly the Trade Federation. The truth is, they hire him regularly, including to stage attacks on certain trade routes so they can justify their military buildup. They pay him in machines, Dane asked, surprised. From what I've heard, those droids aren't the highest quality. Quantity has a quality of its own, Xizor replied, and with a solid core of living troops, Ravak uses droids as cannon fodder and distractions. With droids in the field, fewer bolts fly towards his elites, and he knows how to use them well. He glanced at them. Furious Ned proved as much. Didn't ensure his victory though? Lina shot back. Don't be foolish, girl. Dane chided. The defenders were on their last legs. If not for the timely arrival of a Herald of Profit, they would have been slaughtered. Lina shrugged, unimpressed. Won't matter here, we will be on the offensive this time, and I'm sure the Lady Captain will bring out some of her elites. Dane grinned. You shouldn't be so overconfident, girl. Even if you are probably right. After all, we are far from the most powerful servants of the Blackthorn dynasty. Xizor glanced at the two figures, the true threat in this room. If these were only a glimpse of the Blackthorn's potential, he doubted they would struggle to clean up Ravak's base. Understood. I shall provide all relevant data, Xizor promised. On a similar note, Silent Tide interjected. When we neutralize your three rivals, including a fellow prince of Black Sun, someone will need to broker a peace deal between the Commonwealth and the Syndicate. This will be done through the Blackthorns, and it is through them that the Black Sun will cooperate with the Commonwealth. Xizor raised an eyebrow. A layer of disconnect is useful in any situation. It provides deniability, though that won't help with those who saw your arrival at my palace. People will suspect our cooperation regardless, so we need a plausible story unrelated to the Syndicate. What do you propose? Silent Tide asked with a sly smile, raising her glass. Xizor tapped the holoprojector, hoping she had already guessed. Hyperdrive technology, he said, grinning. Your colleague, Forgemind, spoke with one of my transport company's representatives during the banquet a few weeks back. I've been observing your progress in securing this and other technologies since, and it has been rather slow. He gestured again, revealing the logo of the galaxy's most renowned shipyard. Quad Drive Yards has been sabotaging your efforts. They see your shipbuilding as a threat. I can offer expertise, not only from my own researchers, but also by leveraging my influence to convince other shipyards and companies to work with you. Silent Tide's eyes glinted in the sun of the setting sun, all with the promise of technology exchange and ties to our merchants. She asked. Of course, Xizor said with a smile. There is enormous potential for profit here, and I am not the only one who knows it. I even have contacts who might convince one of the Quad's biggest competitors to cooperate with the Commonwealth. And who might that be? Niatel asked. Only the most renowned shipbuilder in the Outer Rim, Corellia. The reaction was immediate. Even the usually indifferent Lina raised her eyebrows in surprise. Who didn't know Corellian engineering? Well then, Xizor said with devilish grin, I believe we can now discuss the details of our most profitable partnership. In the back of his mind, a vision of future wealth and glory blazed like fire. Okay, apologies for cutting in this place, but there is a situation. Compared to the previous 2 seasons, Season 3 of your homebrews didn't get that many installments. I mean, before I was flooded, now there is barely a trickle. So I'm extending the time frame as to when you can send me your homebrews. Rather than 14th of December, I extend the timeline to the new year. Season 3 will start in 2026, a fun series for the new year. I'm also lowering the required amount of text to half a page. Just don't make your homebrews all of 10 sentences long, and we should be good. Remember that you can send them to me through Discord and Gmail alike. There will be a link to Season 3 announcement in the pinned comment. You got all that? Glorious. Nothing more to say for now. Let's get back to the story. The ship shuddered violently. Lork struggled to stay upright. A barrage of shouted warnings assaulted him, each one another nail in his sanity. We just lost hangars 4 through 8! Critical damage to the main engines, hyperdrive disabled. Frigates TC-332, TC-445 and TF-100 are drifting. Lucrehulk Saron just went dark, reactors dead. Captain, the enemy boarding party is approaching the bridge. The last call snapped him to action. Send the droids! All of them! He screamed. The destroyers, the droidecas, they will stop them! He slammed his hands against the tactical display. Launch all starfighters! Prepare for the core to detach! We will land on Molavar itself and wait for reinforcements! Many would call it cowardice. He didn't care. Lork had always been more merchant than soldier. He knew how to handle pirates. And with the defenses of a single Lucrehulk, not to mention his fleet, he should have been untouchable. And yet, here he was, broken, his fleet shattered, an unknown enemy tearing through every defense he relied upon. Understood, Captain! His crew obeyed without question. They were merchants too, not warriors. Detaching the core, starfighters deployed to cover our descent. Nul Tal confirms order and will join, but Vatuk, Captain Rook refuses to retreat. Lork ground his teeth. Rook, the damn fool, overconfident, bloodthirsty, insane. Leave him behind, he roared. If we are lucky, those ghosts will focus on him then. A tremor, stronger than the first, threw him to the floor. He screamed, pain and terror gripping through him. Slowly, he pushed himself upright and scanned the bridge. And then he saw it, the source of the disturbance. The bulkhead leading to the bridge was denting. What? Where are the droids? Where are the droidecas? Lork screamed. Why haven't they stopped the borders yet? Captain, the enemy has destroyed the droids! One crewman shouted, disbelief cracking his voice. All of them! His eyes widened in terror. Captain, they are Force users! They crushed the destroyers through their shields! What? Impossible! Lork wailed, denial crawling at him, as the bulkhead buckled under impossible pressure. Force fields! Activate them now! System not responding! Another crewman cried. They are breaking through! Guards! Guards! Lork bellowed, crawling desperately away from the bulkhead, though there was nowhere to run. The few remaining droids and Nemoidian guards surged forward to defend him, and then the bulkhead screamed, tearing apart with a final ear-shattering crash. The massive doors were ripped to pieces, flying across the bridge at impossible speed. Half a dozen guards and just as many crewmen were crushed beneath the fragments of hardened alloy. Lork turned, and to his horror, he finally saw the face of his enemy. Tall, humanoid, armors glinting as if made of solid fire. They rushed in, shining and roaring blades, leading the way as they cut through the few defenders who tried to hold the entrance. His eyes couldn't follow them, they were too fast, too agile. They dodged incoming blaster shots or blocked them with their weapons with practiced ease. And with similar ease, they cut through the defenders, their blades always finding an opening that ended a defender's life. For a moment, Lork thought salvation had arrived. A door on the far side of the bridge opened. A dozen of B-1 battle droids stormed in, moving to protect their captain. Then, lightning struck. Pure, white and searing, it leapt from one droid to another, frying them all in an instant. Lork's scream tore through the chaos. He crawled backwards, eyes wide with terror. A few heartbeats later, shots and shouts cut off abruptly. Hands grabbed him, unyielding, iron strong. He thrashed, trying to break free, but it was futile. He was thrown to the floor. Crimson boots stopped just inches from his face. He trembled uncontrollably, forcing his gaze upward. He knew in the pit of his stomach who had done this. And there he was, the alien who had arrived from the other galaxy. An Aeldar corsair, armor of molten fire, gleaming crystals embedded across its surface. A fur cape draped over his shoulders. Two obsidian horns jutted from his helmet, framing a visage that radiated wrath and inevitability. The Aeldar looked down at him through the glowing visor, disgust radiating from him as if Lork were less than an insect. Please, mercy, Lork begged, his voice trembling. I am but a simple merchant. Take anything you want, just silence. The Aeldar intoned in flawless basic. His voice was a void, a distant sunlight, cold, absolute, lethal. Lork raised his arms, torn between begging and defending himself, when a sudden explosion caught his eye. Vatuk, Captain Rook's ship, erupted in fire and metal, ripped apart by two Eldar vessels. The mighty Lucrehulk shattered under the assault, a devastating strike that left Lork staring, horrified. The Eldar's voice cut through the chaos. Weak, he said, each word a blade. Weaker than I expected. When we arrived in this galactic disk, beyond the reach of the she who first, we felt joy. Free of her glare, free to explore, to plunder. His visor gleamed brighter, and here I find myself, disappointed. You barely scratched the paint on my ships. Your artificial warriors failed to impress, failed to even wound us. He tilted his head, listening as if to an unseen presence. We were told the Trade Federation is strong and wealthy. I find only one of these true. Lork froze. They were told? By who? The Tau? Did they hire these corsairs to strike at the Trade Federation? Who? Lork croaked. Who hired you? The Eldar head tilted, amusement flickering across his visor. That knowledge will be useless to you. Before Lork could speak again, the blade flashed. It cut his throat with terrifying precision. He clawed at the wound, disbelief and panic flooding him. But the Eldar strike had been perfect. Blood poured, his vision blurred, and he collapsed to the floor. I shall give you my name, so you may die knowing who ended your miserable existence. A cruel chuckle echoed. I am Anazi, the Red Devil, Baron of the Sunblitz Brotherhood. But you and others of your kind will know me by the name the Monkey of my home galaxy gave me. Lork gasped as blood filled his lungs. The Red Baron. Carry this name as your soul is dragged into the abyss. Lork twitched once, coughed, and then silence. Anazi turned from the broken, bleeding Neimoidian to face his fellow corsairs. No survivors, he declared, his voice cold and absolute. We take all that we can and leave the hollow husk behind to be found. He fixed one of his close companions with a piercing gaze. Kalech, ensure some recordings remain, enough to spread the glory and terror of our name, but never enough for them to study us. The warlock bowed her head in respect. As you wish, Baron. Anazi nodded, then strode from the room, ignoring the desperate shouts of the crewmen being slaughtered behind him. This was only the first step on his path to glory and infamy in the strange new galaxy. Soon its primitives would fear the shimmering ships of the Eldar and the might of the Sunblitz Brotherhood. They will fear his fleet and his name. And in time, he, Anazi, the Red Devil, would rise to claim the position he deserved. No longer merely a baron, but a prince. And that's about it. I hope you enjoyed both parts of the episode, the deal with Xizor and the more exciting ending where Eldar Corsairs showed their true potential. I would like to apologize for not including Tia Boba in this episode, as writing the script took more time than I expected, and I didn't want to push a request on her to voice Rina Voss in such short time frame. The speed of writing was slowed because I decided to be extremely productive by playing The Witcher 3. Yes, Polish man playing a Polish fantasy game. It doesn't get more cliché than that. Anyway, another thing which is worth to mention, we just hit 6,000 subscribers, which is insane because a year ago I had only 1,000 subscribers. Now I have 5,000 more. I cannot express how grateful I am for your continuous support for me, this channel, and this series. Special thanks go to all my Patreon supporters and those who donated to the art budget on Ko-fi. I'm glad that I can commission real artists so that this series has its own art gallery, free of AI slop. Speaking of which, I tip my hat to 3D Vincents and Hayden Lumpkin both, who created glorious art for this episode specifically. On another note, I'm very happy that the shorts with side content for this series are well received. If you have idea for a short, just write a comment with short idea on the top. If you have a question you would like me to answer, write a comment with Q&A on top. One suggestion and one question per person. No more, no less. Next video I will be working on will be why Warhammer 40k needs a Tau game, as both 6k and Holiday Special. But I think that's it for today. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed. Now, my dear viewers and listeners, remember, wherever you are, whatever you do, try to enjoy yourself while you can. I wish you most heretical day and happy holidays as well. Ta-ta!